Welcome everybody, it's Joel here at Trading Group 101 and welcome back to the 101 YouTube channel. Today we are going to be looking at a lesson and just a general discussion with myself, sharing some of my thoughts and a little bit of a playbook on exactly how to trade new COVID variants and potentially the outcomes of that. It's something very topical. As of today, there's no doubt going to be some new introductions of restrictions for the UK and globally as well around the Omicron variant. So let's have a look into exactly what all this means for markets, how you can trade it, and ultimately how you can use this into your own trading decisions. So the most important thing to focus on will be human behavior, and most importantly, how that changes. This is what offers us the trading opportunities that we should be looking for. Doesn't necessarily matter what those new variants might be or what it might do and all of the other stuff that goes around it. It just really matters, how are people reacting to it? How are they changing their behavior? Both in terms of the general population, but also in terms of governments, institutions, when we're talking about restrictions and that type of stuff as well. So by focusing on that human reaction and that human behavior as it changes, we can make logical, factual-based trading decisions, not based upon our emotions, our own fears, our political thoughts, our personal opinions upon the new variant or the outbreak in general, the pandemic as it has been currently flowing, because we shouldn't be using our own personal opinions in our own trading decisions. I know that sometimes doesn't necessarily make sense, but it really should always be logic-based and be working upon rules that you can repeat. So even if you're having a bad day, if you're having a negative day where, we all naturally will feel better or worse from one day to the next, you don't want that to affect your trading outcomes, your profit and loss, or at least you need to limit that as much as possible. And by having a set of rules, that is the way to do it, okay? So that's what we try to focus on here. We're reading human emotion, reading the human behavior and the changes that happens, okay? Now, it's important to know that we're not looking to try and see the whole population change its behavior all at once, because it's just never going to happen, and extremely rare that you'll see large swathes of people changing their behavior and it becomes extremely noticeable and obvious, okay? Quite honestly, if those situations are occurring, you've probably missed the trading opportunity by that time anyway. What we are looking for here is very small, minute, discrete changes in human behavior at the margins of the population. All it takes is 1%, 2%, 3% of people to change their behavior, and that has drastic effects on the economy, massive changes in spending, saving, all of that type of stuff. So that's what we're looking for. It may just simply be certain countries maybe are reacting to a new outbreak differently to other parts of the country, and that's fine, because if you can analyze that and to be up to speed with that very, very quickly, you're able to be ahead of the majority of the market and you'll actually be able to profit from those trading decisions. So what are we actually trying to see? What can we define? What can we really kind of outline as the steps of what we want to see in this human behavior? So what changes that we might see, they include maybe travel changes, either personal decisions not to plan trips, or even, as I say, it doesn't necessarily have to be government restrictions. It certainly is that, included in that. You should certainly be taking that into account. But as well, you should be looking at personal decisions. Are people starting to work from home instead of going to the office if they have the option to do that? Maybe you'll know that in your own 9-to-5 job, you'll notice some of the people are actually staying away from the office if they have the opportunity, maybe only coming in 1 or 2 times a week when it's absolutely necessary, instead of usually they'd be there all the time. Those very small, minute changes, and you think to yourself, why is that the case? And you think to yourself, if that's impacted, if that's motivated by a new outbreak, then that's a human behavior change that you can notice and will have an effect on the economy, because simply if you can notice that at one place, then it can be replicated many other places, and that has a major effects, as we mentioned, about the changes at the margin. It may only be like 10% of the workforce are changing their travel to work patterns, and all of that, replicate that across an entire country is huge. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. We're looking at spending changes. Are people looking to save more in uncertain times when they're not necessarily sure if there's going to be another widespread lockdown, or maybe fear that may be the case? Well, if that is the case, then certainly it means that companies won't be investing more money into technologies or new infrastructure. These things are what we need to be looking for. These are the factual-based research that we can add into our trading decisions in order to start bringing a framework together in order to trade upon. A major thing that we need to be looking at as well is fear. Are people talking or acting with a little bit more fear and apprehension about the unfolding events? Are you noticing that more people who maybe previously haven't been concerned about COVID suddenly start to become more fearful? People you know maybe who have not been interested in wearing face masks for the last 6 months suddenly are doing so. Well, that's a massive change in the behavior, and it will have massive effects also to how they spend, save, and everything else that goes into the economy. So you can massively affect that and have that framework in your mind again, and you know, just note these things down and obviously start to become aware of them, and you can start to add that into your trading decisions as it goes. Okay, so while we also look at these behaviors changing for the negative, as we always analyze how to trade new variants as they're breaking out, equally you can start to notice, are these things changing for the positive after a period of negativity? Are people now spending more money, planning more trips, etc., which in turn will cause positive effects to the economy? But also as well, this is a vital part to plan your trading decisions around. And so certainly that something has been really, really effective lately when we think about like the Delta variant outbreak and a few others as well that were spoken about previously before that never really turned into too much that changed our natural spending patterns and our human behavior too much, really, is notice whether or not these things are getting reported in the media, getting almost blown out of proportion. But when you can actually track the data, when you track what's actually happening in the market and nothing's massively changing, well, in that case, that might be a great opportunity for you to take the advantage of the market by taking a contrarian trade and able to not necessarily have to always, trade the negative of what might happen. It may be that everybody is actually forecasting negative events. You have tracked the data, you understand that maybe nothing is actually changing, or maybe even just maybe marginally increasing for the better, and actually able to trade that as a trading decision and be on the right side of the market where the majority are not. Okay, so things like that, that's what we need to be trying to change our mindset into in order to make the best of these trading decisions. So what markets are likely to be affected? Well, this does to some degree depend upon the type of behavior changes that you're noticing. Of course, less travel and more people working from home, for instance, will affect the oil market and travel stocks predominantly more than other markets, of course. But by and large, because of the interconnectedness of global markets in one way or another, all markets can be affected by these even small changes. Okay, as an example, we'll just use that I just mentioned there about the oil markets and the travel stocks. If we saw less travel, more people working from home, that would negatively affect the demand for oil, and no doubt oil prices would go down. So there's one opportunity, there's one market that would be able to react from that. Of course, profitability of travel stocks, they would negatively be impacted if they're selling less seats on their travel services. But in turn, not only those obvious markets that would be affected, but let's say if the oil market starts to fall, then we know that the USD CAD Forex market would also react to that because of how heavily it is related to the oil market itself. As the travel stocks start to fall, then we'll know that if they are major travel companies that are listed in the major stock exchanges, major stock indices, the S&P 500, for example, then those are going to be affected as well. Those indices are going to get changed and affected in those prices as well. A major market that will be affected is always going to be gold, because naturally in times of uncertainty, gold will get a bid, will get gold will get demand from from any fear in the market. So that certainly is a massive market that also gets affected, and naturally as well the stock market. We can really notice the major markets that are going to get affected if you just simply skip back to early 2020, and you'll actually see the markets of exactly how they got affected and what changes happened. So you can really start just to kind of use that as a playbook and able to see which markets were massively affected and which ones were not, okay, without trying to state the obvious in this video. So this really is what we want to get down to, the nit and gritty of how to measure these changes, okay? So as we stated at the start of this piece, our trading decisions need to be based upon fact, not personal emotions or opinions. It's very important to find ways that you can measure behavior changes, because once you can measure it and put data towards it, it counts for a hell of a lot more than just yours or mine opinions. That said, alongside all of these resources that I'm going to share with you in a moment, you can also use your own findings from conversations with friends, families to gauge their behavior changes as well. If, for instance, you notice that your own friends or family are cancelling holiday plans, then that can be an indication, and certainly can be sure that other people will be doing the same, because naturally, us as people, as a population, we're not all that different, okay? So in this instance, if I started to notice that in everyday life, then I'd be actually going to look at some resources, looking online, doing some further research to back that idea up. You know, looking into how many holiday bookings, how many cancellations have been happening lately, just to confirm that initial idea and back it up with facts. So, as I say, even without these personal findings and evidence, you know, it doesn't need that inkling to start driving a, you know, research into that. It's something that you should be doing anyway in these uncertain times, and certainly as the pandemic is still developing. And so you can be ahead of the curve before these things actually start to become widestream, mainstream information and mainstream news. You should be looking at resources that are tracking the COVID outbreak as it's happening, okay, and tracking also the human behavior. So it's quite a good thing that at least weekly to check some of these resources and to see if you can notice any sort of changes, okay? So let's get into it, and let's actually look now into some of the, well, at least just some of my favorite resources that I look regularly and just kind of measure and track. So let's start having a look at some of these resources that you can easily track, all for free. And of course, there are some paid resources as well that I'd look at, but it's not something I'm going to be sharing immediately here. I'm going to look at just the free, easiest ones that you can track, and you can get a really good feel for the data with just these ones itself. Okay, so let's have a look. First things first is the covid19.apple.com/mobility website. And this really is the mobility trends report from Apple Maps. Okay, so, and it's really, really easy to identify as well. So some of the major nations that are tracked, you've got, you know, Italy and Germany, so you can get a really good feel for European markets, you know, how they are reacting, the States, of course, and then also the United Kingdom. All right, so as you can see here, this tracks it all the way back 2020, and here you can see, of course, the major drop-off in travel just as the outbreak started here, and you can see how some of them, you know, Italian market reacted massively because they were heavily hit at the first instance from the COVID outbreak, from the pandemic. And of course, rebounded very quickly as well, further than the other markets that didn't maybe detract or kind of bounce as low quite as much as the others. But you know, you can also look at the individual markets themselves. You know, maybe you can go really deep into the analysis in that respect, but not necessary. Probably more than anything, it's just to look at the general trend. You know, quite clearly at this point we're rebounding back, and you can obviously start to see that even flattening out around here. And the good thing is, you could probably even just notice these dates around here are exactly when the stock market started to bounce back as well. So if you start to like overlay this into a stock market, you'd actually start to notice some of these major trends have a massive effect on the stock market themselves. So all of that's starting to come into effect, and obviously over the last couple of years, 18 months or so, and then more recently, you can see since the summer, towards the end of the summer, the majority of these markets are now starting to drop off again. So what does that mean? Does it have any indications? It's certainly something to pay attention to, I would say. So to be able to, look into that. You can also look into individual countries themselves and individual cities. So let's try that with New York, and you can get a really good indication of, are more people driving, walking, or using public transport? All right. Chart for me is just the main one and getting an overall trend, an idea of how that mobility is working. So the second website that I'm going to share with you is called opentable.com/state of the industry. OpenTable, for anybody that isn't aware, this is where people can book tables as well. So this gives you an indication of how full restaurants are and how people are eating out, spending money. This is how I read into this data. Are people spending more money or not? Because I don't know if you're like me at all, but I certainly know that if I am feeling good about my finances and whatever else, then I'm going to be spending money eating out more often than I don't. It's probably one of the major things that you cut back on if things are negative or if things aren't going as well as you expect. Whereas if in the good times, you're always going to be more open to eating out than you are otherwise. So it's a really good indicator for human behavior. Okay. And what you can see here on this little chart is two elements. You see the dotted line for 2020 versus the 2019 data, and then you can see 2021 versus 2019 data as well. This is the longer chart here. All right, so the middle line here is the 2019 data, and it tells you whether or not you're above or below, but that's not necessarily the important data that you're not, it does have some relevance, because if of course, if we're in below 2019, that's of course negative. But what's more important is actually the direction of travel for that line. Is, are we generally heading upwards, sidewards, obviously here, or maybe even dropping off a little bit most recently, or are we in this element here where we're rising steadily and whatever else? So it's a good indication of how things are compared back to pre-COVID, if you like. So third website that I'm going to share with you as well is research from the Australian government. Okay, so doesn't necessarily get updated all of the time. It's the latest server is in August, so it isn't obviously live day to day or whatever else it was. But this is really, really good data. It only covers one country. I'm sure there are results for other countries as well, just haven't kind of necessarily found those. But it's a good idea anyway, just simply because naturally Western culture does copy from one to the other, so you can get general ideas of trends as well for other countries, just simply off some of this data. And natural feeling, human emotion gets replicated all around the world. So simply, to what extent are you doing more of this or less of this compared to the COVID pandemic before COVID-19? Okay, more than usual, about the same, less than usual, didn't do it before and still don't. So browsing the internet, using social media, watching streaming videos, online shopping, so now 39% of people are actually doing that more. So that's maybe a trading decision that you can actually start to get yourself interested in. So more, 39% of people are doing that more than what they were before, compared to 14% of people who are doing less. So that's an interesting change that you can maybe take advantage of if you're investing into companies. Make sure that they have some online presence, online shopping presence. Will obviously, companies that do that better than others will naturally perform better in that market as things change. And other elements as well that you can see through this. The major thing that I tried to do with this is just kind of measure this data with this data. The rest of it doesn't necessarily matter. People who are doing it the same, not really going to make much difference to a trading decision. What you want to see is changes in behavior. So are people doing it more, or are they doing it less? So you can just see instantly there, straight off there, online shopping, 39% of people are doing it more than what they were, 14% are doing it less. So that certainly shows a trend towards online shopping. And the other flip side to that, are you shopping in store more? Only 9% of people are shopping in store more today than they were pre-COVID. whereas predictably, more than half of the population are actually doing this less than what they were before. Okay. So other things as well that you can get into, just kind of general fear. You know, do you trust governments to do the right thing, etc., more or less? So good things that you can try to take into account of that as well. But you can go really deep into this. These have some really different things that you can dive into. So here, you know, they go into all different detail on some of these reports as well. Okay, so looking into all of this as well, really interesting information if you want to get deep into that. And finally, the fourth website that I'm going to share with you is Flight Radar 24. This is possibly one of the most easily visual statistics that you're able to see. This chart here is great just to determine exactly how things are going, if people are traveling more, less, or whatever the case may well be, than what they were pre-pandemic. So what you can see here is the thick line. That's the moving average, 7-day moving average for 2021. You've then got the actual thick line that gravitates up and down. That's the actual data, as it were, but obviously you don't necessarily need that so much. So I can click that off and then I can just keep that on there. I'll do that the same with this as 2020 and 2019 as well. So if you actually just take the actual data off and look at the overall moving averages for those, then you can actually start to get a little bit more of a indication of how people are, the general trends, as it were, of what people are doing. Is it going up, down? More people are traveling, less people are flying? That type of thing has massive implications as well into this as well. Commercial flights as well, all throughout it's all tracked as well throughout the pandemic, so you can get a really good insight into that as well. Okay, so our black line is where we are at this moment in time, and that has gone down slightly compared to where it was early in December, and certainly more it's drifted down quite significantly from where it was in the height of the summer. You can actually even get that a little bit closer, drag and drop it, and you can really use this data to get a good indication of, look at the height of the summer. 25th of July, we had for 2021 204,000 flights. Look at that compared to today, or yesterday, sorry, only 177,000. So just can actually get a really good indication of how people are changing their behaviors. So those are some of the major indicators that I look for from week to week, and of course there are other ones as well, but those are the main ones to start paying attention to. And of course, doing some of your own research, you can actually see some of these yourself. Gauge a really good factual data set of what is happening in the economy, how are human behaviors changing, and then we're able to make trading decisions based off that as well. Other indicators as well that need to pay attention to. Probably one of the biggest and the furthest reaching changes to human behavior comes from government restrictions. So it goes without saying that keeping up to date with government announcements is vitally important, but it's also at the same time important to filter out some of the news from day to day, just news chatter, filter out what's important. So in the UK, a really good way that I try to do that as well is, and also other countries do this at the same time as well, you'll all be aware of it, I'm sure, but at the height of COVID in early to mid 2020s in the UK, we had daily briefings from Boris Johnson, the UK Prime Minister, for anyone who isn't aware, and maybe international viewers, and his scientific advisors were doing daily briefings. This in itself was an indicator to pay attention to, not necessarily the content of the briefings, even though that is vitally important, but just the fact that they're having daily briefings on the news every single evening. And if they're becoming more and more regular again and start to come towards that, even if it's, doing once a week, you start to notice it's becoming more and more regular, then it shows that it's something to pay attention to, because these announcements have a huge psychological effect on many, many people. And of course, goes without saying, but just simply, stating the obvious, pay attention to reintroductions of any public restrictions themselves, mandatory face masks, travel restrictions, inbound travel restrictions, testing on, quarantine when you come into the country, etc., etc. We all know these restrictions off the back of a hand by now, but pay attention to them. Are they becoming more and more prevalent in certain parts of the world? Because that's likely to spread across the world as well. Other governments will start doing exactly the same. All right. So if you start noticing that happening in other countries, maybe not your own, it may well be an opportunity to start thinking, or at least just tracking it in your own mind, thinking, is that something to pay attention to? If that does become global again, we're going to see a massive change in markets. So maybe stay ahead of that as well. So it's all well and good actually having this information, but how can you actually use this for trading? Okay, that's now what we're going to just briefly discuss and share some of my thoughts on as well. So you've done all of your research, you've looked at some of the data sets, you've noticed a change in human behavior, but how am I actually going to make some profit from this decision? Or maybe, close some of my positions, protect some of my profits up to now, etc., etc. So without trying to teach you exactly how to trade and all the aspects of technical analysis, if you're interested in doing that, you can of course visit our website to learn more. For that, all of the links are below. But should you be looking for, what you should be looking for in the market is dislocations. That's what I like to call it, dislocations in the charts. So generally you've noticed as an example, you notice a decline in flights over the past X number of days. You would then expect, we'll go back to the same example before, as I say, the oil markets are starting to fall because there's a lack of demand, less oil is being used, etc., etc. Of course, you can't just simply use that one data set. You need to, try and put that across more and more confluences, as we always mention in Trading 101. So check the oil charts. Are they in an uptrend while your data is suggesting it should be in a downtrend? Well, that's a dislocation in the market that you should be actually looking to take advantage of. Could well be a great trading opportunity for you to take advantage of by shorting the oil market and being ahead of the market before it turns again. Have you noticed more friends and family that are becoming more fearful and changing their behaviors? Well, usually in times of market fear, we'd see that gold would rise. So check the gold charts. Are they declining? Are they going down when they should be going up? Well, again, that could well be another opportunity for you to trade. These are the types of things that you need to be able to do. Not only do all of the fundamental research that I'm, discussing here, but also marry that up with some of the technical analysis so you can understand what the charts should be doing. And if they're not doing that, well, there's probably a trading opportunity there one way or the other. Okay. Realistically around this, trading opportunities are endless. It requires a really good understanding of technical analysis to fully take advantage of all of these fundamentals that you're going to be learning about, maybe being having a little bit more access to now, sharing some of those researches and some of those resources, Well, of course, even without having a complete and utter understanding of technical analysis and all the chart work that goes alongside that, I think even just using some of those fundamental analysis tools, you are able to use some logic around that with trading and no doubt able to make some significant profits around that as well, I'm sure. So hopefully this has helped your understanding of how to trade rapidly unfolding events such as COVID outbreak or a new variant. And of course, as well, if you want to see more of these videos, then please do support the channel below by sparing a second or two just to simply like, subscribe, comment, all of your thoughts below, all of the good stuff that I'm sure you're no doubt aware of. If you could do any of that, it massively supports the channel, helps other people find this resource as well. And of course, as well, thanks in advance and wish you all the best of luck in your own trading, guys.